the moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
We shouldn't even bring it up because you'll probably relapse.
Yeah, knock on whatever is around you.
Yes, indeed.
All right, well, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Ho, ho.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Yes, this is our Christmas spectacular.
Yeah,
Spectacular. It is spectacular. It's something.
it is something. In our minds, it's
It is
spectacular.
something.
It's big on our calendar, at least. I don't know if it is on yours. And if it is, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is a very special episode. We try
Oh,
to...
great. Is this the episode where Arnold gets touched by the bike repairman?
It's actually
Very,
you.
a very special. I get touched?
You
Oh.
have been nominated. I think we have a bit of a theme. We're going for the unconventional Christmas movies, not the ones that appear at the top of everybody's list. Some people, yeah, it is on the top of their list, not on the top of everybody's. So we are covering Gremlins, the original 1984 Gremlins, and the original 1988 Die Hard. And along with these two, as a bonus, we are covering one of the most beloved Christmas specials, TV specials,
Ooh.
in all of history.
What?
In all of history, and I can say that with confidence, Emmet, Otter's Jug-Band Christmas.
It's funny you say that because I know people who don't even know what this is.
And I feel sorry for them.
Me
Yes.
too.
Well, I brought it up last week. I was unaware of this until I met my wife. It's a very Christmassy episode.
Yes, it is.
So we want to get into the news?
Sure.
We'll do it. All right. Anne Rice has passed.
That was shocking. She
Yeah.
was such a pioneer. She really popularized, I think, an aesthetic that became very mainstream later. And I don't know a single writer of my generation who wasn't influenced by her work in some way.
80. She was 80, but she was still active, right? And she was still writing.
Yeah.
I don't.
And she was very visible on the pop culture landscape as well. You'd always see a soundbite from her on something or other. So yeah, it is shocking. Just it's not like somebody that's disappeared off the grid and suddenly you're hearing of their passing. She was very active.
Well, it's sorry to hear that. I guess we'll stay with the funeral procession here and march into Michael Nesmith,
Yeah.
who, this is a bummer. They just him and Mickey Dolenz had just finished up this tour that they were doing, literally like November 14th, and they were slated for one more. I think it was some kind of a cruise that they were going to do in 2022 together with a final farewell.
I can't tell you how important the Monkees were to me growing up. But I'll try next week because just coincidentally,
as fate would have it. This is crazy. This is not the first time this has happened where we've picked something on our schedule and then somebody associated with this movie has passed away. So this is, I think next week's going to be a very interesting talk because Mickey Dolenz is it. He's the only surviving member.
The only surviving member that we have left.
And say what you will about the Beatles being very influential. And obviously the Monkees were, created to capitalize on the Beatles' success. But a lot of us hold those guys very near and dear.
Mm.
And more importantly, Michael Nesmith is the reason why we had MTV, which literally changed music forever in this country.
Yeah, it's interesting because all the obits started, the hat wearing member of the Monkees, and it's like that's what he's going to be remembered for, the wool cap. I guess there's a reason he didn't wear it during the movie. Huh?
That was his name on the pilot. They referred to him as Wool Hat in the pilot episode of The Monkeys.
Oh, that's a little bit of a low blow.
But the other fascinating thing about him is that his mother invented liquid paper, whiteout.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that kids these days are like, what?
They
don't use typewriters.
Yeah, it's hard to put that on the screen. It doesn't really work. Yeah, unfortunately, there we go. Once again, another week. More people dead.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, on a little bit of a brighter note, we just spoke about this like 2 weeks ago, where Patty Jenkins had been pulled, or they pulled Rogue Squadron, the new Disney Star Wars movie, because she was so inundated with Wonder Woman 3 and Cleopatra. And now it looks like she's been pulled off Cleopatra so she can devote some time and focus on Rogue Squadron. So I find that very interesting. I don't know who made that decision. If Disney was like, listen, we really want this to move forward and we got to do what we got to do. But it looks like it is no longer on hiatus and it's back on.
I have very high expectations for anything Star Wars related that has Rogue in the title.
What's weird is that there was a lot of speculation on the Star Wars side. The fandom was like, because Wonder Woman 2 was not met with super critical praise, that they were somehow going to try and get rid of her. So this is nice to know that they are sticking with her and that she has a vision. And hopefully Wonder Woman 84 was just a little bit of a blip.
That's so ridiculous, because it's not like male directors never make bad movies.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, right? It's like, but not only that, it's
they don't get held to the same standard. They don't.
No. If anything, they're hired for 4 more movies to redeem themselves. That's like, all right. So I'm happy. I'm thrilled. I do have one public service announcement I would like to just throw out there to all of our listeners, which is tickets are now on sale for Weird Al Yankovic's 2022 tour. So I'm excited. I have my tickets. He's starting April 26th in Poughkeepsie, and he's working his way back to Carnegie Hall at the end of October. Like I said, Poughkeepsie goes all the way across country and then makes his way back. So these guys are doing almost a full year tour. WeirdAl.com. Go check it out. Buy your tickets.
I do want to mention that if you have a reader in your life who likes horror novels, Christina Henry books make a really nice stocking stuffer.
They do indeed. They are almost perfect for fitting in the stockings.
Mm-hmm.
The little paperbacks. That's a nice plug. I like
that.
And
I've got my copy of Horseman sitting on the mantle on the hearth.
Very good. So go out. Where can we go and get your books? Anywhere, right? Amazon.
Yes, you can buy them anywhere. You can buy them at Barnes and Noble. You can buy them at Amazon, but it's preferred that you buy them at your local independent bookshop. And if you don't have a local independent bookshop, then there's a wonderful website that is called bookshop.org. And they support local bookstores. So even if you don't have a shop that's right nearby you, they give like a dividend, a percentage to local bookstores all around the country that participate with them. And they also will show you bookshops that might be near you that you can support. So please support small businesses. And if you can't do that, please order your books from bookshop.org.
So there you go. News.
Wow. That started quite a while ago.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the episode proper.
Yes.
We're hoping that Jim can really edit the hell out of this.
I'll try to make something out of it.
You have your work cut out for you today, man. He's like, son of a...
Gremlins.
We're going to do Gremlins first.
We're doing Gremlins first. I think people are going to be coming in droves to listen to our Gremlins conversation.
You think so? You think that's
I think
what they're
so.
Here for?
Yep. Hey, Gremlins speaks to our core audience. I would like to think so anyway.
Well, this is actually one of the movies that endeared me to my wife, because when I first met her, not only was she still rocking the Little Mermaid bed sheets, but she would do the little bright light, and yum yum.
And what is the age difference between
3 years apart, my friend?
Okay.
Probably had my Star Wars sheets at the time, so I still have them, by the way.
Gremlins was released in June of 1984. I was looking at some of the reviews that were written back in 1984, and many mentioned that this really should have been released during December. And I concur. If you're watching a movie about Christmas in June, that's the last thing on your mind. But this is a classic Christmas film. I think more so than Die Hard. Not to take anything away from Die Hard. Christmas is going on in the background. That's just the setting for Die Hard.
Well, you could say that about Home Alone too.
Home Alone 2 or Home Alone?
No, Home Alone as well. Home Alone.
I don't think so. I think Christmas is more integral to Home Alone than Christmas is integral to Die Hard. But that's another discussion. Gremlins,
we'll get there.
I think is just steeped in Christmas, so much so that it's subversive because it's such a dark themed movie. Because
nothing screams holiday film like a creature blowing up in the microwave.
Exactly.
Yes. Merry Christmas, everybody.
And apparently it would have been a lot darker if some people had their way that were making this film. But yes, Gremlins released in the summer of 1984, and that was a huge summer. It was released the same day that Ghostbusters was released. Can you believe that?
No, that's like the golden age of cinema, huh?
Now that wouldn't happen today because if you have these two potential tentpoles, especially two scary / comic movies, it just seems odd that they would release them on the same day in direct competition with each other.
The reason why Warner did release it in the summer and not Christmas was because they wanted a tentpole for the summer because they didn't have one. They didn't have a big film to go up against like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Ghostbusters and these other films that were coming out. They moved it up to the summer so that it would compete. So they would have something in the mix basically for the year. And it turned out all right because it ended up being the 4th highest grossing film of the year after Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, and Beverly Hills Cop.
It seems like there was enough to go around in terms of dollars in the moviegoers' pockets in the summer of 1984.
Well, because the ticket was probably like $4 back then.
Hey, inflation, it's not like you're thinking this is great. Tickets are only $4. You're probably thinking back then, $4? Come on.
$4.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy my popcorn, my jujubes.
Just significantly less films were, released every year compared to what comes out now. So many films come out every week. I talked about this last week after the show was over, but the summer this was released, the Imperial Theater in Wappingers Falls only had 2 screens, and it showed Ghostbusters and Gremlins all summer, basically. I saw Ghostbusters 3 times and I saw Gremlins twice because there was only 2 theaters. I lived in a small town. If you wanted to go to the movies otherwise, you had to go to the drive-in. Those were the only 2 movies to see.
It's funny that you say that because I remember the Imperial well, and that's where I saw Ghostbusters. Although I didn't live in Wappingers in the same town that you did. I lived in the city of Poughkeepsie, and I had some more options that were some of them were actually within walking or biking distance from me. And I often did that, rode my bike to the cinema. But I saw Gremlins. I remember my father took me. It was a sneak preview the Thursday night before it opened officially.
Wow.
And remember, it was playing in the Duchess Center, which was in Poughkeepsie. It was in the same little outdoor plaza as a Kmart and a ShopRite, and it had a Roy Rogers restaurant in the plaza as well. We ate dinner at Roy Rogers. It was a 5-star dinner, let me assure you.
They still had the Fixins bars back then.
They still had the Fixins bar, yep.
There you go.
And then we went to go see the sneak preview, and for one day, I thought I knew something that the rest of the world did not. That I was just enamored with Gremlins, loved it. And it was a packed house. It was a 1-screen movie theater. So it was a large screen. It was a large audience. And the audience was just absolutely, it's hard to describe that feeling when you're in, because it's happened so infrequently now when you're in a theater and the audience is fully invested, screaming back at the screen, especially when mom is attacking the gremlins in her kitchen. I remember the theater was just in an uproar during that scene, and forget it, it took it to the next level when she put that one in the microwave and it hit cook. I was just on cloud 9 when I walked out of the theater. I remember. And I went back to see it maybe 2 or 3 times more. And, you know, I had the Gremlins doll. I had the Gizmo doll. I still have the Gizmo somewhere, but I don't know what I ever did with the big Gremlins thing. But I was all about this movie. It was my favorite, even more so than Indiana Jones at the time. It was my favorite movie of the year, hands down.
Jim, you're 4 years older than me, right?
Yes.
So you would have been 14
I would have been 13 because
13.
my birthday is in November.
That makes more sense. Like that would be a perfect sweet spot for you at that age, 13. So I was 10. My parents did not see this movie. I went with my Girl Scout troop, and then I went later with a friend. Like, this was the era when people dropped off their 10-year-olds at the movie theater.
See you in 2 hours, kids.
And went and did something else. Of course, we know that there was a lot of hand-wringing at the time about the violence in this film and how the marketing made it look like it was a kid's film, and really is not on a lot of levels. But at 10, I can tell you that the violence to me was very slapstick.
Yeah.
The sort of moral panic about the violence in this film and how it would negatively impact kids. And of course, we know that this eventually led to the PG-13 rating. I think more parents were probably distressed about it than kids were.
Oh, well, I think that's always the case, though, right? Think about the children. Think about the children. And the children are like, this is awesome.
Right. I remember talking with my friends about, the gremlin that went into the blender, and we just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, it's like green blood. It's not realistic violence whatsoever.
And you deserved it because they're nasty. They're nasty little critters. It's funny.
Right.
I'm older than both of you, so I was probably 16. I saw both. Well, I saw Ghostbusters and Gremlins in the drive-in. The idea of going seeing a movie twice was just unheard of. You went to the drive-in, you saw the movie, and you waited till next week to what else was coming out. So, but I did see these in the drive-in, and I enjoyed them.
Because I didn't really remember the uproar. Of course, I remembered the advent of the PG-13 rating and how big of a deal, how big of a novelty that was to go see a movie that was PG-13. I think Red Dawn was the first one I saw that was PG-13.
I think that was the first movie that was PG-13.
I think you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But so I went back and I looked at some of the commercials. Like, was it really that much marketed to kids? And it completely was. There's one, I'm going to play it for us now. There was a commercial for Hardee's that had a Gremlins book and record Happy Meal set that they were offering. And the commercial is so babyish and cute, you would think that it's a kid's movie.
There's something special for your kids at Hardee's. With any sandwich, fries, and soft drink, get a Gremlins storybook and record for 99 cents or less plus tax. Collect all 5 of these read-along stories about Gizmo and his friends.
It's your Gremlin books, it's your records too, 'cause you love Gizmo and Gizmo loves you. Now it's Gremlins that are making America say, it's here, it's all here at Hardee's.
And there was so much merchandise around this film, like the selling of the Gizmo toys, the Gremlins cereal.
Oh, I don't remember the cereal.
Yeah, the cereal.
I don't
remember the
that.
cereal really well. Just like the vast amount of merchandise that was associated with this, and it was all geared towards kids. I mean, remember that this was not a time when adults collected toys, to put on their shelves. This was merchandise that was made for kids to play with.
You're pointing fingers at me.
So
no, you had to go to get your Happy Meal. You got your toy. Yeah.
Right. And it was geared towards kids. So like as a 10-year-old, I was in some sense their core market that they were trying to sell this movie to.
Sure.
And then, it turns out, of course, this movie is not at all appropriate for 10-year-olds. But on the other hand, I do think about it in this context a lot. I know I've said this before, but I still think it's relevant. The reason why certain stories are popular with kids, because kids know that the world is not like all lollipops and rainbows. That's why Roald Dahl is sort of a perennial bestseller, because he told you the world, yes, wonderful things can happen in this world, but a lot of bad things will happen too. And I think kids know that. They don't want to be talked down to. And I think for most kids, the violence that's in this film is really on the level of something that they had seen in like Wile E. Coyote or
correct, yeah, or a Tom and Jerry cartoon. You said it's slapstick, it's over the top. I mean Billy's getting shot at with a crossbow and whatnot, and obviously people are dying.
It's staged in a way that you could interpret it however you wanted. So like Mrs. Deagle comes flying out the window, you see her lying there,
But right, you never get confirmation that she is in fact dead, or and she deserved it. That's all. Let's all agree on that right now.
I safely assumed that she was dead, even when I was 13.
But it didn't traumatize. Friggin' Phoebe Cates' story about her dad being found in the chimney is more disturbing than watching the old lady get flung out a window to her death.
Yes, although I have to say that at that age, I remember that just kind of going over my head.
Yeah, that wasn't a big deal to me either. Like they'd already thrown the microwave at you and the blender at you. So this was just, an extra flavor to the movie. So it didn't really stick out, although it does now.
Oh, very much.
And that's like her Bravo scene, although I remembered it being more manic than that. She's more understated than I remember it being. And that's just because I probably built it up in my memory.
I don't even remember like registering that scene until I was an adult watching this film. And again, like that's, has to do
at
with
10 years old, you're still believing in Santa Claus.
Yes.
So the idea of your dad dressing as Santa to come down the chimney, I don't think that you could even wrap your head around it or be like, wow, that's, it's I can easily see that as a throwaway thing that it wouldn't make a difference to you.
It didn't even
just give me more crazy gremlins running around.
Right. And then like the next scene is like the gremlins are in the theater singing hi ho and then they blow them all up. So you're not really thinking about that. That's not sinking in, but an adult sees that in a completely different light.
Yeah.
And
it changes her character because she was very kind of anti-Christmas or whatever. And only when Billy really starts prodding does she reveal this, and you're just like, it's heartbreaking to hear this story. It's funny you mentioned the theater because this is such a great scene. The one thing we haven't talked about, these are all practical. Every friggin' creature that you see on this screen is an animatronic or it's a hand puppet. They are real, they are physical. There's no CG because CG just wasn't there technologically wise. And to see that theater filled with Muppets, for lack of a better,
it looked like the Muppet Show theater in some of those shots from the stage when you see
back into the seats. And all I kept thinking is Tarantino completely stole this for Inglourious Bastards. Just swap out Snow White for Dumbo, and we got a bunch of Nazis in there as opposed to gremlins, and we blow the whole place up.
Now just correct me if I'm wrong, because I think at least one shot has stop motion, because when you have the reveal of Stripe walking down the road and all the gremlins are behind him.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yes, you are correct. But again, it's stop motion. It's not CG. It's still a practical. Somebody's physically moving these things and filming it. And it really is the level of emotions that they get from these characters, especially Gizmo, who you as an audience member immediately fall in love with.
So you start to feel very protective of him because he has that emotionally manipulative quality that we've talked about with Baby Yoda. He has big eyes, which you are literally
big ears.
You're genetically programmed to feel sympathy toward things with big eyes, with the oversized eyes. He has the ears are too big for his head.
He is the OG Grogu. You're right.
Does Marty Feldman fall into that category as well?
Oh, I would so take Marty Feldman home.
And also because all the other gremlins are mean to him.
Yeah.
So
yes, he's got no friends. He's got no friends except for Billy.
Yeah. So you really feel protective of him because the other ones are like spitting at him. They throw darts at him, and you're like, oh, poor Gizmo.
And that's besides Bright Light, the one line of dialogue I'll always remember is Gizmo, gaga, and then they throw him down the laundry chute.
Right. They're so mean to him. So you feel a lot of sympathy toward him, also because he's the only Mogwai who appears to be nice, right? His spawn are all mean.
And he's sorrowful when he sees that he's multiplied. And after they've cocooned, he knows what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about these rules.
Well, let's talk about let's get into the movie.
Or do you want to actually talk about the plot?
Well, everybody knows that we don't have to go through the plot. Everybody knows the plot. But, Billy's father, Rand, the traveling salesman / inventor, picks up Gizmo in Chinatown. The son, the nephew, the grandson of the owner. The owner doesn't want to sell Gizmo.
He tells him straight up, not for sale.
Yeah, I'm not going to sell him. And then he leaves, and then the son's like, "We need the money. Meet me outside. I'll take care of it."
Take this stupid thing.
This is the weird thing. You talk about the rules. as Mr. Peltzer is leaving, you hear the rules as a voiceover. And I don't even think it's the same kid's voice in the voiceover. It's like an afterthought. Oh, we forgot to put the rules in. We need to put them in now.
Yeah.
He didn't tell him the rules in the shop. The rules are: do not subject him to bright light, sunlight especially, because that will kill him. Do not give him any water. So I guess they don't drink anything at all.
That seems to be you're right. Yeah. Okay. Don't get him wet. Yep.
And do not, under any circumstance, feed him after midnight.
Which it's always after midnight.
Yes, that is.
Where's the
big,
cutoff? Where's the
So
cutoff
here's the
on
thing.
this?
I watched the commentary. I have the 25th anniversary Blu-ray. It's actually very funny. It's Joe Dante, Zach Galligan, Phoebe Cates, Dick Miller, and
Oh, nice.
and Howie Mandel, who
Together?
is the voice of, yes, who are
That's
the,
awesome. Yeah.
who is the voice of
wow.
Gizmo.
Yes.
And
Which a lot of people don't realize that was Howie Mandel doing
Yeah.
that voice.
he got into that gig because Frank Welker brought him to try out. So, which is
Yeah.
also a great story. But Zach Galligan said people are always coming up to him on the street and being like, no matter what, it's always before or after midnight. And he always says, I didn't write it. Take it up with Chris Columbus.
But even more so than the Don't Feed After Midnight. I mean, when they're all full gremlins and they're in the bar, they are pouring beer all over themselves. They are running around in the snow. They are getting wet. They are not multiplying again. So it's like, even though you establish the rules, they go out the window really quick.
They do.
You just have to, let it go. And hopefully by that point in the film, you're sort of involved enough. In
Oh
there.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we can.
That doesn't matter anymore.
When
at
you
that
start
point, yeah.
watching this now, you nitpick it apart, and you're like, "Wait a minute, I've watched this for 20 years." Now all of a sudden, I'm like, "That doesn't make any sense at all."
And you know something very important to Gremlins that I never picked up on until now? This gives the opportunity for a reunion between Judge Reinhold and Phoebe Cates.
There was no pools around for her.
No. And that's like a throwaway role as well, because you always expect him, even though I've seen this a million times, I always think, oh, he's probably going to come back by the end.
I
Nope,
think he
don't
was
see him
supposed
again.
to. I think a lot of his stuff ended up getting cut.
There's
Yeah.
on the Blu-ray, there's extended scenes, which kind of reveals more about Gerald's fate. But there's a lot of threads actually that kind of peter out halfway through the film, because it just suddenly becomes very preoccupied with the gremlins. And it makes sense, but there's like a lot of stuff that's established, like the woman who's trying to get an extension on her mortgage.
Yeah.
You see her twice, like, first asking Mrs. Deagle, then asking the bank manager, saying, we just need a little extra time. Like, we both just got new jobs. You think something's going to come of that. Nothing
No.
comes of that.
Yeah,
Nothing comes of Gerald. Nothing comes of Billy's artistic aspirations, all this stuff.
No, you're right. And by the end, you want to see him like writing a children's book about this whole event.
Yeah.
That poor lady who can't pay her mortgage. Now the whole town is ruined. So her property value just plummeted.
And the other thing that always strikes me is that everyone seems to be just mildly amused by the existence of Gizmo. Even Mr. Henson. Oh, that's very cute. Like, this is a species
what
you've
is
never
this thing?
seen before.
Right, correct. Yeah, go figure. But yeah, you think about, we talked about Gizmo getting abused and bullied by these gremlins, but Billy was getting bullied by friggin' Judge Reinhold.
Yeah.
He was pretty much.
And
right.
Mrs.
He was
Deagle,
like,
Mrs. Deagle, complete Wicked Witch of the West.
Yes,
lift.
Ms. Gulch. Yeah, I agree. Ebenezer Scrooge right there. She was.
I'll get your little dog.
Yeah, that was a little too on the nose, but
she even has her own theme music. So yeah, she's clearly the Wicked Witch.
Oh, and talk about theme music. How heartbreaking is Gizmo's little song? You can easily see how Warner Brothers saw that character and just were wringing their hands. Oh, kids are going to love this. I don't blame them for.
Well, I think Hasbro saw it and immediately created the Furby to take full advantage of that. I think there was a lawsuit involved.
There was.
Yeah.
I do want to give a little shout out because Hoyt Axton plays Rand Peltzer, and he's one of my favorite performers of all time. We've never presented this on this show, but if we ever do, it's a $5. He plays Alec's dad in the Black Stallion. he has a very small but significant part in that. Side note, he also wrote Joy to the World.
which is crazy. I mean, that's just oh yeah, by the way, I also wrote like the number one hit from the 70s.
And side note to that, his mom wrote Heartbreak Hotel.
What?
Yes.
That I didn't know.
For Elvis
Jeez.
Presley.
Well, just a Hoyt Axton. That's
Does this
stage
guy have
name
a
right
son
there.
or daughter that has written some incredible song as well?
Yeah.
But I just love him. I love his voice. I love his warmth. I just think he really presents, he does a lot with this character, even though there's like not really a lot for him to work with.
Yeah.
He just presents this idea of this guy who's just really desperately trying to create that one great thing.
Yeah.
And
you talk about these elements or these story ideas that go nowhere. And yeah, it would have been great for him to come back and create something to take care of these creatures. He's an inventor. Come up with something that's we're just gonna open a blind. Which I get, Zach Galligan was not happy because I guess in the original script, he opens the blinds along with Gizmo, and Spielberg is like, you know what, we're gonna make Gizmo the hero. So they cut that.
And I wonder if Billy was supposed to be younger in earlier drafts, because why does he hang out with a kid? Is this his best friend?
Or why
Corey
does his
Feldman
mom
that
give
comes
him a
over?
robot?
He was supposed to be younger.
Oh, he was okay.
Yeah.
Or why his dad is bringing home a pet for him. You don't do that with a 20-plus-year-old.
I don't think he was supposed to be 20, right?
Well, he's working at the bank,
Oh,
right?
that's true. He is working at the bank. I don't know.
Well,
you really start scratching the surface.
Yeah.
This thing, and there's a lot of questionable elements.
he was supposed to be 13.
What?
Originally.
Yeah, he did not pull out.
Yeah.
No way.
And then they decided to change it.
But didn't change the rest of the script, right?
For some reason,
keep him with a 13-year-old best friend, and
they aged him up.
Well, now that you mentioned Corey Feldman, the only reason he's in this movie is because he got cut from E.T. Spielberg felt bad. He put him in this role. He was supposed to be Elliot's best friend in the E.T.
Speaking of E.T., did you guys catch the E.T. references? There's two of them.
Yes.
One of them is the toy on the
Mhm.
shelf, obviously, but there's another less obvious one. Do you know
When
it?
Stripe says phone home caca.
No, actually, it wasn't that one. Sorry, it was a much.
There's
Oh,
three
wait a minute,
then.
I don't remember
There's
that.
three.
Three then. There's three then. There's a much less obvious one. The marquee on the theater.
Oh, A Boy's Life.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
the
that was
working,
the working
title.
title.
And Watch the Skies was the working title for Close Encounters.
Yes.
And Joe Dante said he put that there so that when Spielberg saw the dailies, he'd be happy.
There you go. I think Spielberg would have been happy regardless. But that little town, which by the way is Hill Valley,
Yes.
that was filmed in the Universal backlot a year before Back to the Future, it had 2 movie theaters. It's not that big of a town. And yet you got 2 movie theaters going on.
Mm-hmm. I guess so.
And you mentioned Dick Miller before, and I'm like, that guy sold the Terminator that 9mm Uzi, by the way.
Yeah.
He deserved
Dick
to
Miller
go.
was in everything.
He's
I
great
feel.
though. He's like, when you see that guy, you're like, it's that guy. You don't remember his name, but yep,
Mhm.
Dick Miller. You mentioned Howie Mandel as Gizmo. Michael Winslow did did the voices for the Gremlins.
Except for Stripe, which is Frank Welker. My husband actually pointed this out on the stereo when Billy's mom goes downstairs. The Johnny Mathis record is playing. You can actually see little gremlin handprints on
Oh,
the
geez.
stereo and on the wall, which is just a nice little touch if you notice it.
Right.
There was a very funny thing that Zach Galligan talked about. The scene where Billy puts the Santa hat on Gizmo's head and he falls in the trash. He said it's excerpted in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And he only knows that because, as he puts it, I get a check for $2.12 every time it's shown 70 times on the movie channel. Because
were they watching it on TV?
they must have. I
don't
know that I've
remember
ever
that.
seen Christmas Vacation.
What?
So.
You should. Speaking of Christmas movies, you should.
And also, Joe Dante still has the Peltzer peeler juicer in his garage.
I'm sure it still doesn't work. There's a lot of juice coming out of that thing. You only put 2 oranges in.
I know. Like Zach Galligan said, the hardest thing is, he said he knows that it's going to start spewing in his face because the tape.
Yeah, sure.
And he's trying not to
flinch.
wince,
Not to-
like,
yeah.
Ahead of time. But he does, like, after the initial shot, you know, because they were talking over the scene and he pointed out, you can sort of see he's like, "Oh," like he kind of
Yeah,
braces,
that's funny.
like, because he knows
It's like
he's
that
gonna
little
get
kid in
shot.
North by
Right.
Northwest that puts his fingers in the ear before they even pull the trigger on the gun because he knows the sound's coming. Yeah. Did
So-
anybody catch Spielberg cameo?
Yes, he's on the bike.
Yeah, he's on the electric bike at the convention.
The guy in the bar that comments on Billy's artwork is Chuck Jones.
Chuck
Yeah.
Jones. Yep.
Chuck Jones is like just so revered in my household. I could never miss that.
So I want to talk about the fine line that this walks between being scary and being funny, because the scene with Mom and then the Johnny Mathis record starts playing after she sees in the attic that all the cocoons have hatched and you haven't seen the Gremlins yet. Now, this is very important because when I saw this, I remember on that sneak preview night, all I was familiar with, I don't even know if I'd seen a trailer. All I was familiar with was the original one-sheet poster. And that had the little gizmo hand coming out of the shoebox.
Yeah.
So you didn't even know what gizmo looked like. So this was all new to me. So at that point, when Mom is coming down the stairs, you hadn't seen a gremlin yet. Maybe I think there was that one scene where it's the reveal in the school when Billy is looking for the one that's killed Mr. Henson. But it's a scary scene and it is still suspenseful to this day, even though you know what's going to happen. When she creeps down the stairs, the record's playing and she stops and she hasn't seen them yet. And you're like on the edge of your seat. A little later, the Gremlins are completely played for laughs in the bar and in the movie theater. So I think it really walks that line very well. And it kind of went out the window with the sequel, which is complete parody.
Oh, absolutely.
And they didn't even attempt to be scary, which really disappointed me. And maybe I really should reinvestigate the sequel because I've only seen it once just because I was so disillusioned with it. But apparently Gremlins 3 is in development and an animated series is being developed for HBO Max as well currently.
I don't think I knew that. But think about that. Think about like going into a theater nowadays and genuinely being surprised by something that hasn't been spoiled on, you talk about the fact that you don't watch trailers, but on social media and, that's how they pump these movies. You gotta make a name and get a buzz going. So these things would have been front and center in all the marketing if this movie came out.
And think about it. Back then, if you didn't see a trailer before a movie that you happened to go see, you didn't see the trailer because there was no internet. There was no other means for you to see
unless you were watching Ebert and Siskel and Ebert,
Yeah, but they didn't usually review a movie until like the week or the weekend after it came out.
Yeah, but it's not like I was running out to see a movie opening weekend.
It's interesting because Zach Galligan said that there was such secrecy around the appearance of the Gremlins that every day their stuff would get searched before they left the set.
Well, that was also because these things were worth $30,000 to $40,000 a piece. So you didn't want them to disappear off the set.
Well, I mean, they only had an $11 million budget. We talked about this last week with Red Notice, where we were like, they spent $1 zillion. Where
right.
did that money even go?
Yeah, no, every penny is on the screen.
Yeah, and they did a great job because they really do a lot of sort of old-fashioned low-budget tricks to extend their effects, like where you hear things but you don't see them, and stuff like that, like really simple things.
Yeah, and even like a lot of the shadow play, in the theater or whatever. I did read that one of the rules is no bright lights, which work to your advantage when you're trying to hide flaws in a puppet or strings or anything else along those lines. This guy's not out in broad daylight being exposed.
I'm shocked that they were able to get the rights to Snow White, as this is a Warner's movie, and of course it's a Warner, so Bugs Bunny is in here more than once.
I was gonna say there's quite a few Warner Brother properties floating around in here.
Remember that famous Bugs cartoon where he battles the Gremlins on a plane?
Supposedly that was supposed to run in front of this and they couldn't get the rights to
but that would have been brilliant.
It's in the movie itself. You see him watching TV, so you get little snippets of it, but I guess they couldn't get the rights for the entire cartoon. So
by the way, did you realize that Billy's mom is also Tatum and Dewey's mom in Scream?
No, but she's also Lorraine's mom in Back to the Future.
Yeah, she's everybody's mom.
Everybody's mom.
Yeah, I did read that the animatronic Gizmo broke down so many times that sometimes the crew would fall asleep waiting for it to get back up and running. The crew actually started this laundry list of things they wanted to do to this Muppet and this little Muppet. So I think the little dartboard scene was a little getting even with this damn thing that stopped production.
It was. And Zach Galligan said sometimes the setups would take so long. He said he remembered going into Steven Spielberg's office and playing pole position for hours, just like waiting for everything to like the lighting to get into place and all this kind of stuff, because they had to do these really elaborate lighting setups, you know, for the puppets and all this stuff. So one thing that was really interesting to me was that Dante said that the reason why Spielberg offered him this movie was because he had directed Piranha, which was a ripoff of Jaws, and Spielberg thought it was hilarious. So
he's like, all right, you got me. Fine, come on, you can do this movie now.
And is Dante like, that wasn't supposed to be funny?
It wasn't supposed to be funny.
No, I
at
think
all.
maybe
Dude,
it was
serious.
because he isn't really, he did more than one film like this, because The Burbs was one of my favorite films.
Yeah.
He also directed that. It's the same thing, like that sort of blend of horror and comedy. He definitely has like a certain sensibility.
There was a bit of studio interference, and I think maybe in this case it was for the best. The script was a lot darker than what the movie turned out to be. Just some of the things that I was reading that were in the original script that got axed. Billy's mom was originally beheaded in the script by the Gremlins. So she didn't survive their kitchen encounter.
That is some dark right there.
The Gremlins also ate Billy's dog at one point in the original script. And here's the kicker. Gizmo was supposed to turn into Stripe. Stripe wasn't a separate Mogwai.
Yeah, they were one character.
And Spielberg himself nixed that. He's like, no. Gizmo is your key in this movie.
Yeah, he's your hero. But that's also why when you get to the end of the movie, Gizmo's not really doing much. You know, they stick him in the car and you get a couple like facial reactions. He's not really an active participant at that point because he was supposed to be the same character as Stripe.
We were talking about Phoebe Cates' speech, her Santa speech, a little earlier. Both the studio and Spielberg didn't like that. Neither of them liked it. But Spielberg recognized that it was Dante's wish to have it in there, and he fought for it. So you can thank Steven Spielberg for that being in there.
Jim is a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. Do you know the connection here?
What is the connection?
Apparently, in Billy's house, you have the two swords that are on the wall that they use at one point. Every time they walk in the door, the one fell off.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the actual swords that Buffy and Angel used to fight each other during season 2.
Really?
Yeah. So there you go.
The plan originally was to have monkeys wear Gremlins costumes.
Yeah, I want to see this test footage. Because apparently the monkeys flipped out.
As soon as the helmet went over their heads, they flipped out. Yeah.
That's got to be a hoot to just. But yeah, poor monkeys.
Yeah.
Put me back in my cage and shove a cigarette in my mouth and put this gremlin head on me.
And unsurprisingly, we were saying that the marketing campaign was really geared towards kids. Lots of walkouts during this of families that brought small children.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Lots of walkouts being reported.
But again,
this is not what I signed up for.
The kids, I mean, depending on the age, you know, little kids probably would have been scared or startled by a lot of stuff that was happening on screen, but maybe not for the same reasons that parents thought they were, you know, in the sense of like sometimes kids are just startled by loud noises or whatever.
Right, yeah.
They get upset.
Jump scares,
and they start crying. But I'm sure that more than anything, it was the parents.
Yeah.
You know,
oh, this is too much for my kid. Yeah. And of course, then you have the other end of the spectrum, because I remember very well sitting in the theater for Spider-Man 2 and that whole scene where Dr. Octopus's hands are tentacles are going nuts, killing everybody. And there's a kid next to me go, Dad, this is scary. Dad, I don't like this. Dad, I don't like this. And the dad was like, shut up. I'm like, that poor kid's probably still in therapy. Sorry, you're going to toughen up, son.
Critics, from what I'm seeing, mostly liked it. Both Siskel and Ebert loved it. Leonard Maltin said that whatever good spirit that the film had was negated by its too vivid violence and mayhem, and it was icky and gross.
Oh.
And then Leonard Maltin himself was attacked by gremlins in the sequel.
That is true. I forgot about that.
Now, this inspired lots of copycat movies. Critters, Ghoulies, all these crappy movies that came in its wake, which have kind of also diluted the original.
Actually
But compare it to this, it's like
Of
small time,
course.
completely small time.
No, well, anytime you got a movie like this that's a hit, everyone's going to jump on
Yeah.
it.
Oh, and a hit it was. It made $212 million on an $11 million budget. So yeah, as we were saying before, there was lots to go around during the summer of 1984.
84. That was
Lots
a
of
very good
blockbusters.
year. Yeah. Did either of you see that Tim Burton was considered to direct this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Spielberg decided not to give it to him because he hadn't done a feature.
Right.
So
What could have been? I mean, obviously, listen, it is what it is now, but in the hands of Burton, it would have been very interesting.
yeah, it would have been interesting, but definitely I think a slightly different movie.
Oh, absolutely, it would have been. A different movie.
And I'm not sure, and I say this even knowing that he directed Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I'm not sure how much of the humor of the script would have been retained in a Burton version. Because I think one of the reasons that Pee-wee's Big Adventure is funny is because Tim Burton was working with Paul Reubens, and Paul Reubens was really exerting his sense of that character. You know what I mean? But Tim Burton's later films, I mean, he's got a little humor, but it's not really his main feature.
Strong,
you know what I mean?
So I'm willing to say that I would induct Gremlins into the 5-bucket list.
I will back you. Yeah, absolutely.
I really loved it. This movie meant very much to me as a kid, and watching it again, it's just joyous. So wholeheartedly, I would like to induct this into the 5-bucket club.
Woo. I hope I get one of those robots in my stocking. That was the same robot from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, by the way.
I assumed it was. I didn't fact check that. But
Yeah, Dante threw a lot of little Spielbergian love nuggets in there, huh?
Yeah.
He's like, he's kissing up to the boss. You might as well just put an apple on his desk. Where'd they get clothes, by the way, though?
Again, that's a well, they did have a Montgomery Ward's right there. So on
but
the
those are little baby clothes.
So there were children's clothes. There's actually you see the children's
They're not wearing
section.
onesies. They're wearing... Anyways, there we go. We are out of Gremlins.
Let's get out of Gremlins. Let's go to our special holiday concession stand, pick up some candy canes, and come back and watch Die Hard.
Greetings to Father, who works all year for the family and outdoes himself at this joyous season with lots of surprises for everyone. Greetings to Mother, that miracle worker of the home whose loving effort seems sometimes like magic. And greetings to little brother, usually a terror, but somehow since he visited Santa at the department store, he's not been himself at all. Greetings to Sister, who was so busy decorating the house with mistletoe and then seemed to forget it was there. Greetings to Grandma, Grandpa, and all your uncles and aunts. May you gather round the table for your Christmas feast in the joyous tradition. What we want to say is that the management and staff of this theater, all of us, wish all of you good luck, good health, good times, and a very Merry Christmas.
We're back. Die Hard is our second feature this week.
I will say I rented the Blu-ray and it looks pretty damn good.
The thing with these older films, unless they do like a proper like full restoration, you're always going to see a little bit of grain and stuff. But it's on film.
I took the Blu-ray out from my library, put it in, and it said, "This will not play. There is something wrong with the disc." I look at it, the thing is scratched up beyond compare. So I had to get it off of Amazon. Peacock, and I watched it with commercials. I was like, I'm not paying $4. I am going to watch it with commercials.
How dare you? I'm not watching this. Merry Christmas to you, $4.
But no, having said that, you'd think that I hate Die Hard. I do not. I remember seeing Die Hard. This was 88, so I was 17. And this was one of those days where I went to the movies all day long. I think I bought 3 tickets, and I don't remember what was playing at the same time, but Die Hard, maybe Big, I don't know. It was one of those types of movies. Yeah. But Die Hard was like the middle movie of my 3-movie spree on this particular day. and I was shocked and amazed. I was expecting nothing but a dumb action movie, and I really enjoyed myself. And I remember coming out loving it. You got a great action movie.
Yeah.
Because this cannot be understated, is that Bruce Willis was not a movie star at the time that Die Hard came out. He was a TV star. He was on Moonlighting, which was a hit. But in those days, TV actors and movies did not mix. You were one or the other. And there were really few exceptions to that rule. Because he tried with Blind Date. Blind Date was 86. That was like 86. At the height of Moonlighting's popularity. And then Sunset, and both of them were failures. Even before the movie came out, a lot was being made of Bruce Willis's salary. They paid him $5 million, and nobody thought that he was worthy of that.
Well, he was pretty low on the totem pole when it came to people who actually they wanted in this role. First and foremost, I guess it actually was supposed to go to Frank Sinatra, or Frank Sinatra had first shot at it.
Well, they had to offer it to him because this was a sequel to the novel that Frank had made the movie of back in the 50s or 60s, The Detective.
Yeah, 66, yeah. Imagine that. I think he was 73 at the time. Frank Sinatra running around. That would have been
I'll take it. I'll do it.
Thankfully he said no. And they reluctantly hired Bruce Willis, and the rest is history, because this character is, they've gone on to make like 5 sequels.
Yeah. In some way, shape, or form, Bruce Willis has been playing this character ever since.
Yeah. All the way to the bank. He's making a hell of a lot more than $5 million now. That's for sure.
Something I was really I was really thinking about this movie sort of less as the movie in itself and in the context of the time it was made. I don't know why it struck me so much this time compared to other times that I've watched this film. First, I was thinking about John McTiernan, who I think may have done more than any other director to establish a certain kind of masculinity on screen in the 80s. If you think about it, because he directed this, he directed Predator, which actually has like the most manly man like standoff in film of all time, right? When Schwarzenegger and oh my gosh, just blanked out.
Carl Weathers?
Apollo Creed. And
Carl Weathers,
yeah.
When they're shaking their hands and they're like flexing their
muscles.
I
know, right?
You son of a...
He made Hunt for Red October.
Yeah.
Again, like sort of very masculine film. He also made Last Action Hero, which sort of implies that maybe he was kind of in on the joke, but considering how bad, maybe not. But he definitely, I think, brought a certain kind of manliness to the screen that has been that like established a lot of tropes, and then as people try to duplicate it basically all throughout the 90s. I was also thinking about like a couple of things that are sort of present in the thematically in this film. There's more than a whiff of xenophobia. There was definitely a cultural backlash at the time, like just sort of in the air. People were like scared of Japanese companies taking over the world, right? Gruber talks about, even though it's a performance, he talks about Nakatomi's legacy of greed. And I was thinking about this in the context of Gung Ho, if you remember that film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sort of pits the blue collar American types against the soulless Japanese efficiency. And I think it was a pretty deliberate choice to make this a Japanese company. This could have been any kind of company. Like there could have been anybody in charge here, but they chose to make it a Japanese company. I feel like that was deliberate. And then the other thing I was thinking about was there was this absolute moral panic at the time about women in the workforce. Again, like you see this thematically in other films that showed up at the time, Mr. Mom, right? Baby Boom with Diane Keaton, she was like this corporate woman who she gets softened into like her, her real meaningful life by the appearance of a baby.
Her real vocation.
Right. I think it just should be noted at the time there was this sort of big cultural conversation about like women moving into the workforce and what does this mean, and like the way that his character is written is he's like a 50s archetype that's been dropped into the 80s, right? He doesn't want to go to California with Holly because obviously his job is more important,
Yes,
Right,
yes.
only
right.
Oh, I couldn't pick
Yeah.
up and leave. I couldn't, I've got too
Right,
many
yeah.
perpetrators to
Like
put in
even
jail.
what do you mean you're going for a job?
Yeah.
You need to stay home and take care of the kids.
right, like only he can save New York from scumbags, apparently.
Right.
He wears his sort of blue collar hardworking guy status like a badge. And he gives her such a hard time about using her maiden name instead of her married name.
Well, that's a little bit of a shock when you think that you go to find your wife at Christmas time and she's not even using your name anymore. It is a little bit of a kick.
They haven't been living together for 6 months, so I'm not sure what he expected.
I don't know. I guess maybe I don't know if I would expect that, but yeah.
And there's a bit
I
of
was genuinely distraught.
and there's a bit of anti-West Coast feeling because more than once.
Well, that's
that's
correct.
California for you. California.
That's New Yorkers for you, right?
I just feel like
Very dismissive of the West Coast.
somehow more than any other time, I was really thinking about this film in the context that it was made. And because of that, I don't think you could ever make this film again. And certainly it was revelatory in the way it presented the action, in the way it sort of spins things out. It actually, what's sort of interesting to me is that what they're doing is they're using a lot of horror movie techniques in an action film, right? Because horror movies always isolate the characters and put them in a place where there's no help to be had, right? And that's pretty much what happens in this film. It's like a haunted house, right? Except it's filled with terrorists.
Yeah, I mean, and the building itself is its own character. I mean, it really, he's, even though he's a cop, he's an everyday kind of guy. He's just there because he's going to visit his wife. Like you said, they haven't seen each other in 6 months or whatever. She took the kids with her out to California. And he's just thrown into this situation. But, we talked about Gremlins and the fact that so many other movies came along afterwards and just duplicated it. And this is really the template for a lot of stuff that we saw after this, like you said.
From this point, you always get like that elevator pitch of movies. Oh, it's Die Hard on a train.
Yes,
it's Die Hard on a plane.
Yep.
I'm like, was there anything before Die Hard? And there are some things that you forget about, like the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 is very much similar to this. So it wasn't the first, but it was probably the most popular.
But
definitely.
it is in the vernacular that this is,
based on a novel, Nothing Lasts Forever, which in itself was inspired by the Irwin Allen disaster movies like Towering Inferno.
Huh.
Yeah. And again, that's, very, very horror type leaning stuff as well. So, I completely agree that the building is a character in this.
Yeah. And what is it? Jan de Bont is the cinematographer.
Right.
And you think about, there's especially when you get into these action movies that you try to establish a flow and a follow through so that the audience knows where you are at every given moment. And it's very clear that where he is in conjunction to what else is going on in this building, where he is, whether he's up on the top floors that's under construction and these guys are coming up to find him. I just think it's just superbly well made. And again, we talk about the fact that there's no CG. A couple of these scenes are miniature, especially when they blow up the top of the building. The building is a real building that exists in LA, but they also created a miniature with a 380-foot backdrop of the city that had working lights and moving cars so that they could do established shots, especially with the helicopters and whatever, that are all seamless. Like you never once go, oh, now we're underwater in a submarine and you can tell it's a toy, I think this is very well made. I enjoy the hell out of this. I love the characters, especially when you bring in Al, the cop, and his angle, who for the longest time I thought that his character carried over into Family Matters, but it's a
it's not the same.
I thought it was the exact same character.
But he is playing the character on Family Matters is a cop. So
right, correct.
So it's understandable that you would think that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Richard Edlund was visual effects. So there's a big degree of top-notch guys that were working on this at the time.
And talk about top notch, Alan Rickman. I can't say enough good things.
First theatrical movie.
He makes this movie. I have to say that he makes this movie.
Yeah.
That you can't have a great action movie like this without a very,
villain.
very strong villain. And he takes this to the next level. Christina mentioned this before. They're not giving away what their motive is. They're pretending to be terrorists when they're actually just not common,
thieves.
but they're thieves. They're looking to rob $640 million in bonds from this guy's vault. Now, I do have to say that now this is a fault with the script, but why they don't start killing hostages as soon as McClane reveals himself, which is the stupidest thing that he can do. If he cares about his wife at all, you don't tell the terrorists that you're present. First of all, they don't even know he's there until he lets them know he's there. Just disappear all these guys one at a time. Don't announce yourself. And this probably could have finished a lot sooner than it did.
It would be a very short movie.
You mean don't write, now I have a machine
gun. Now I have a machine gun.
Ho, ho, ho.
And they're like,
that is a great scene.
And they're like, who wrote this? Maybe if they knew he was there, that would make more sense. They didn't even know he was there at that point.
You're like, who sent this? What the hell's going on here?
Gruber should have been at that point. Okay, start killing hostages until this guy comes out right now.
I think the scene between McClane and Gruber, when Gruber pretends to be a hostage who sort of escaped, I think that's one of the best scenes in the film. It's very short, but it's sort of nice to see the face-off between them.
No, I think you needed it. And I think that Rickman actually asked for that. That was ad-libbed. Yeah, and I think that whole scene grew out of the fact that the crew wanted to hear Rickman's American accent.
I'm going to have a side mention for William Atherton, who always played a smarmy bastard.
He excels in that role.
Jerry from Real Genius.
And he's in Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, yeah.
He just always played this kind of character, like the guy that you want to punch. So when Holly punches him at the end, you're like, thank you.
Yes,
She's been a stand-in for the audience.
I think when he gets a script, he's like, can I be the good guy once?
If you're going to bring him up, I got to bring up Paul Gleason, who was the principal in The Breakfast Club. So another jerky. So you got two of them in this movie.
Yeah.
You actually got more than that, because then you have Robert Davi come in as the FBI guy. Another sleazy character. You see him blow up, and that's very satisfying.
It is very satisfying. Speaking of satisfying, just watching poor Hans Gruber fall off the roof there, which is coming. You've seen it a billion times. But I'm sure you guys have read this, which is they practice this a couple times, and he drops like 20 feet in real life onto a mat. And they were dropping him on the count of 3, and the stunt guys dropped him on 2. So his facial reaction is real, because they did not wait until the 3 to drop him.
He pulled a John Woo. They pulled a John Woo.
Yeah, that's
what they
right.
did.
Yes, I remember when we talked about that. Yeah, it's like, all right, we're just gonna do this and get your real reaction. We're gonna put real bullets in here, see how you deal with that.
We actually watched Beverly Hills Cop recently and hadn't watched that in a very long time. Fairly well overall, surprisingly, but bearer bonds are also a major plot device in Beverly Hills Cop, and we were discussing this, and we were like, it's such a weird thing to steal, because they have numbers on them.
Right. So you would think that somebody has a tracking number, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, I like 2 movie tickets. How are you going to pay for that? I got those variables. I'm not really sure I can take that, sir.
Just seems like the kind of thing that if you stole it, it wouldn't be easy to hide. You would sort of obviously be a thief. Whatever, I guess it was just trendy to use as a plot device at the time. But speaking of Beverly Hills Cop, I mean, that's the other thing that this film has that is a trope that is used over and over throughout these films, the first film that I really remember doing it is Beverly Hills Cop, but obviously this Lethal Weapon is like that rogue cop, right? The guy who doesn't follow the
Yep.
rules.
Yeah. Who would never have a job in this day and age. You'd be fired in a
Right.
heartbeat. It's like Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk. Yeah, you would never be part of the fleet because you just can't follow rules.
And it's somehow seen as, a virtue that this person like causes complete chaos in their week. And that's what McClane does. I mean, Jim pointed it out, he sort of draws attention to himself.
Right.
Throughout, there's definitely much more efficient and effective ways to take these people down that are quieter.
Yeah, especially when you consider all the people that are being held hostage and like you said, could very well be killed.
Now, when Ellis, the jerk, who was admittedly one of the biggest jerks ever on screen, when Ellis goes in to talk to Gruber and is talking to McClane on the radio with Gruber there. Suddenly McClane's like, Ellis, what have you told them? Gruber doesn't even blink an eye. You didn't tell me something about him? He just ignores that McClane even says that. I told them that we were friends. Like the stupidest terrorists ever.
Yeah.
Like it goes right over their head.
Still enjoyable. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
It was enjoyable. Yes.
Yep.
It was a huge hit, just like Gremlins was back in 1984. This was released in July of 1988 on a budget of $35 million, 5 of which being Bruce Willis's salary.
Bruce.
It made $141.5 million, turning him into a movie star. Moonlighting was still on the air when this came out.
Yeah.
It was in its last season when this came out. And you mentioned there are 1 million people besides Frank Sinatra that was offered the role of John McClane and turned it down. Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Richard Gere, Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Burt Reynolds, Nick Nolte, Mel Gibson, who would have been dueling with Lethal Weapon had he done this, Don Johnson, Richard Dean Anderson, MacGyver himself.
He was at the height of his career right there.
Yeah, Paul Newman. And Arnold, I mentioned before, turned it down in favor of Twins because he wanted to go comedic. He didn't want to do action all the time.
Well, you mentioned Schwarzenegger, and there's this urban myth that this was somehow a sequel to Commando. And they've gone on record and said that's not the case whatsoever. But it would have been a completely different movie if you throw Schwarzenegger in here.
I can't
He's larger
imagine.
than life. I don't.
Yeah.
This is the whole point. This is the selling power of Bruce Willis, is that he really is. I mean, this was Bruce Willis before he was Bruce Willis, so he's just this everyman. Yeah, he's a cop, but he's getting beat up. He did wear fake feet, by the way. He wasn't really cutting up his own feet. He wore like plastic Hobbit feet. So, but you fell for him. You fell for this guy. He's in over his head. He doesn't know what to do. And he's just kind of making it up as he goes.
One behind the scenes story that I thought was funny was that Willis had started his relationship with Demi Moore at the time. So in between takes, he was kind of sequestered off with her. So the rest of the cast, Reginald Vell Johnson, who plays Al.
Okay. Yeah, Al.
And Bonnie Bedelia, who plays his wife, were hanging out with Alan Rickman rather than Bruce Willis. So there was no bonding between the leads offset. They were bonding with the bad guy. So that was funny.
Well, they really never had. I mean, he's completely isolated from everything that's going on. He's got one little scene with Holly at the beginning, and then he's on his own. He has a, walkie-talkie relationship with Al, but not until the very end do they even. So I wouldn't think that.
But I think I'd rather hang out with Alan Rickman myself.
You think so?
Yeah.
Given the choice.
Well, this character, Hans Gruber, is like such an iconic bad guy. When you get into, I think it's the third Die Hard, or is it the fourth, where they bring in Jeremy Irons as his brother, who's looking to. Was it the third one? Mm-hmm. And he's looking to exact his revenge. So
because I stopped watching them after 3, so I know, and I remember.
Yeah, that's probably
Jeremy
a good
Irons.
call. Yeah, by time
I think I only saw the second one. That's the one with Samuel Jackson, right?
Oh,
that's the third one.
That's a.
Oh, maybe I did see 3 of them.
One.
I did see 3 of them,
which is actually good. I actually really like the third one with Sam Jackson. Once you start bringing in Kevin Smith, then you kind of losing me. And Lucy, his daughter, who we're introduced to here, and she's all of maybe 3 years old. She plays a big role in one of the later movies as well. Do you know, obviously in other countries, they had to change the title. In the Czech Republic, it is known as Lethal Trap. Norway, Action Skyscraper. Ooh, I can't wait to go see that one. Poland, The Glass Trap. Russia, it is known as Hard Nut. And the winner is Hungary. It is Give Your Life Expensive. What?
We were talking about marketing with Gremlins. Some of the early marketing actually omitted Willis's face.
Well, he wasn't a
Yeah, because they were afraid that with that TV stigma, that audience wouldn't take it seriously.
But his character on that show is so comedic and so slapstick that, yeah, I mean, could you take him seriously? Be like, really, that guy? That's like Michael Keaton in Batman.
Mhm.
You're like, what, Mr. Mom? I'm not going to see that.
But audiences went. They still went.
They did.
They made it a hit.
I do remember going. I was in dating a girl in Ithaca, and we went to the dollar movies to go see this. Money well spent.
So $2 went back to paying Willis's salary.
There you go. She probably paid her own way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was probably cheap date back then.
So what kind of buckets would we give to Die Hard? Is this another one? Is this another announcement?
I said this last week that if you're going to put Gremlins in the 5 bucket, I have to put this in the 5 bucket.
All right. Let's sound that fanfare twice in one episode.
Wow. Can we go for a 3-peat?
So I need some sustenance. Let's run out to the concession stand.
Okay.
And let's come back and talk about our third and final Christmas feature this year, Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas.
I hope they have mashed potatoes.
Look at what your participating Carvel store has this year. Yes, Santa Claus, and he has a helper, Cookie Puss, of course.
That's me.
He's delivering a gift for Santa Claus. Would you like to see Cookie Puss or Santa Claus? I'm sure the children would love to see Cookie Puss.
Merry Christmas.
Please go to your participating Carvel ice cream store or phone the number that you see here, 1-800-327-GIFT. We honor most major credit cards. Thank you, folks, and have a happy holiday.
Okay, we're back talking Emmet Otter, Jim Henson, and the Muppets.
Never a hardship to watch this.
No, this is an annual ritual.
Yep.
Yeah.
It always has, since the first time I saw this has been an annual ritual for me. I don't think there has been one year that I have not watched Emmet Otter for Christmas.
Yes, and I remember seeing this on television when it was first broadcast, and we talked before about my mom and her fondness for VCR tapes, and because of that, I also have watched this every year, I think, since it's been released.
Yes.
So I read it was originally on CBS and then it moved to HBO.
No. Look at that
CBC.
again. CBC. So it
Canada.
premiered in Canada, and it was only known to Canadians for an entire year before it premiered in the US in
Wow.
1978 on
They finally got
HBO.
something over on us, huh?
Yeah, they
Those
did.
Canadians,
They sure
eh?
did.
Huh.
My dad and I were Muppet fans, loved the
Uh-huh.
Muppet Show. And the Muppet Show was in 1978, was in its 3rd season, I believe. And we had HBO, and this was appointment television. We were waiting for this thing to come on, and we were sat there in anticipation on the night that it premiered and loved it that first night. And, HBO wouldn't show something once. They would show something several times during the course of the month that it premiered. So I saw it many times that first year. And every time the HBO aired it since, and then it moved to ABC and then to cable, and then finally it came out on home video. But yeah, this is great. This brings me right back to being a kid. This is one of those few things that can successfly do that every single time I watch it.
So just out of habit, as soon as we agreed that we were going to watch this, I know I have it on VHS. I rented it from the library with the other 2 movies, and I popped the disc in without going into my library to find it. And within the first 2 minutes, my wife and I are going, there's no Kermit the Frog. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah, there's a long history with this.
Which is crazy because he sandwiches this entire movie. They just cut him out.
So he was cut out
Disney.
because of the Disney purchase, and then he was reinstated in a
Rifle-
later
no,
edition.
He should never have been removed.
Mhm.
The other weird thing about this is that this is not currently to be found on Disney Plus, even though Disney purchased the Muppets, because they don't have the rights to this to show on Disney Plus.
Yeah, which is.
But they have the rights to Kermit.
Yeah,
so it's just a big confused
kind of a weird
story. Yeah.
So yeah, that was so if you watch we end up it is on I think Amazon Prime, and it does have Kermit on it. Although I will tell you, the transfer is not. It needs a nice clean. Where's my 4K
because it's it was filmed on video, so it's got the limitations of what it was filmed on.
No, but you can tell where something can be upticked a little bit. This looks horrible on DVD. It looks even worse on VHS. So,
but having said that, some of the leaps forward that these Muppeteers achieved with Emmet Otter are just amazing. Just the fact that when you see Emmet and Alice in the rowboat, and it's seamlessly going from animatronics to practical Muppets. The cuts are just seamless.
Yeah,
I love
this
it.
is the beauty of the Muppets, because I mean, that they're not real characters, but this is a trial run. This was a trial run for the Muppet movie. Everything that they're doing here, they didn't learn from, and next thing you know, you got Kermit sitting on a log out in the middle of a swamp, and Jim Henson's underwater, literally sitting in a barrel performing. It's beautiful stuff. The remote puppetry is pretty impressive,
and the beauty of the story is just unequaled as well.
This is a bummer of a movie, by the way.
I think that if this special doesn't bring a tear to your eye, then your heart is made of stone.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. I mean, the story itself, it's based on Gift of the Magi.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I like about the story is that even though neither of them win the contest, they feel like they've learned something, that their lives have been changed because they took the chance, because they had sort of been caught in a life neither of them are really happy. They've just been sort of subsisting, going along since Emmett's father died, and they they needed this thing to sort of shake them out of the life that was making them unhappy. Of course, this is all emphasized by Paul Williams' score, which I've talked about it before. He's a very emotional writer. This is like some of his most emotionally manipulative work in this movie.
Damn you, Paul.
Yeah. Interesting thing I came across, which I sent to you guys, which is apparently this is now live on stage.
Yep. Yeah.
Not too far from you.
No, the new Victory Theater to 209 West 42nd Street.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a mix of costume performers and puppets.
Mm-hmm.
And the puppets are created by the Jim Henson Creature Shop. So
and Paul Williams wrote some new songs.
Yeah, new songs, right? That's crazy. So that's set for 2022. I also read that there's a new movie in development.
I read that too.
With Brett McKenzie writing.
I don't really see the point of making this into a movie, though. I mean, this is pretty contained for, it's about 50 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And like you get through the whole arc of the characters in that 50 minutes. So it's like, what are you really adding? If you
my fear is that they're gonna, because this is a non-conventional, this is not a quote unquote we won the grand prize and we're now happy winners, happy ending kind of a thing. And my fear is that they're going to change that to make it
to make them win the contest in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen,
I would have bought a River Bottom Nightmare Band album if I had been given the chance.
Guys shirts. Yeah,
I do think it's pretty astonishing that the River Bottom Nightmare Band would win, because they seem like the kind of people who would scare the ish out of Waterville. So
yeah, that they'd all be sitting there slack-jawed looking at them in the audience.
Well, I think that they gave them the prize because they were afraid of what was going to happen if they lost. They're like, dude, we got to just get
they threatened each and every indivial member of that audience. But that is such a memorable number when you just like the fish swimming around in the tank, and
I mean, just a barbecue and yeah.
And Chuck is like a hybrid of Elton John and Gene Simmons. It's
yeah, that fish is pretty wild though.
Yeah. Look at the birds up in the trees.
Hey Chuck.
We're not birds. We're a Jug-Band. I love this. I love it. Revolves around this talent contest, and Emmet and his mom Alice are poor, and they're father and husband has passed away, a snake oil salesman. You can only assume he's an otter as well. They're so poor they can't buy each other Christmas presents. In order to do so, they want that $50 prize money that the talent show is going to offer them. And unbeknownst to the other, they both join the talent show. Alice sells Emmett's tool chest in order to buy herself some material to make a costume. And in order for him to play washtub bass, Emmet has to put a hole in Alice's washtub. And that is a haunting scene when he does that. The echo of the nail
right?
going
That is
into the washtub.
It's like, what did you just do, Emmet?
So,
what
yeah.
did you do?
Horrifically final. And there's this long pause before he lifts up to like actually drive that nail, and then he does it. Yeah, it's just
Ain't no going back from that.
oh no.
Nope.
No.
I think a wash tub would have been a lot cheaper if we just bought another one.
They didn't have money.
No,
They didn't have
I
money,
know.
yeah.
Like I said, it was.
They're bartering, Alice is bartering socks for pumpkins.
I want to see I want to see in the remake that he just turns to a life of crime in order to Emmet and his buddy go on a killing spree.
I think that what would bother me maybe if they made this into a film now is that there would feel some need to make it sarcastic or self-referential or something. And one of the things that makes this really powerful is that this is a very sincere story.
Sincere. Yeah.
You
No,
know,
you're
in a way
they
that
don't dance around the fact that Pa's dead and he left them nothing. Yeah.
and it's not, people aren't sort of deflecting and quipping the way a lot of animated films are now. And
yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's how Emmett's going to cope with it, with a sarcastic attitude.
Yeah, it is very heartfelt. And you get the impression that they weren't in much better position when Pa was alive.
But they were happy. So, I mean, and that's what I mean when I say, like, if you don't cry during this, there's something wrong with you. This is just a very heartfelt story, and I would hate to see that quality taken away from it.
Well, hopefully whoever takes this on, whoever is reverential to the source material and doesn't just say, oh, we're just going to take this. I would like to think that the stage production is true to the original.
Well, I think if Paul Williams is involved, which he is,
Well, yeah,
then it would be, because it was clear from that interview that I read with him that he himself is very reverential about the time that he spent working with the Muppets and working with Jim Henson specifically. And
how could you not, though? I mean, what a magical time. It's something that is never going to happen again. I don't think there's ever going to be another property that was so invested in one man's vision. That he's, even though he's been gone all these years, he looms large over all these characters. And
Paul Williams himself, and I'm sure he'd probably say this himself, he's very Muppetish in appearance. He looks like he fits right in.
He is a Muppet. He's no taller. I did read When the River Meets the Sea was one of the songs performed at Jim Henson's funeral. Yeah, speaking of waterworks. Oof. I would have lost my mind on that one.
And I love the way that the feet move back and forth whenever they're marionettes, when they're walking across the ice. Yeah. I think that's adorable.
Well, it's interesting because I think that, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember really seeing characters' whole bodies on the Muppet Show. I remember seeing them in the Muppet movie.
Yes,
so
correct.
When you were talking about how this is really like a dry run for the Muppet movie, this is like the first time I remember seeing like a whole puppet and not just a puppet from like the torso up. Or whatever. Yeah,
no, I remember the first time that you saw when I think it was Bert and Ernie, and he does do the pigeon, and you actually saw his feet. It's something we had not seen before.
And I want to know how they got Alice to work that rolling pin. I know how they did Kermit on the bike, so that mystery has been solved. But that rolling pin blows my mind every time, and she changes speeds.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was
the magic of cinema.
Maybe it was like the Swedish Chef, where you had one person doing the head and one person
doing the hands. Yeah,
multiple.
I always love seeing the Swedish Chef because Henson and Oz were not coordinating what they were doing, and I always feel like whoever was doing the hands at the time was completely messing with the other person.
Yes,
who
correct.
was-
Right. Yeah.
Because they're just
And how
throwing
they did
stuff
just
in
like
the
laugh
air.
their
The
asses
hands,
off,
yeah.
right? How many times I like screw up a shot because you're just like, I can't believe you just did that. Like punch drunk underneath there. I have a review on IMDb I do want to read to you because it's very entertaining. Okay, you ready for this? The Otters were very inaccurate. I went hold on, it gets better. I went into this movie expecting it to contain two things, jugs and otters. It delivered in spades on the former, but in terms of the latter, I found it rather disappointing. The otters also act like they're all poor, but this strange credibility, as I've never seen an otter with a concept of currency, much less a desire for a balanced budget. Overall, I could not recommend this as a child's movie, as it reinforces several problematic views on the habits of otters. 1 star.
So,
Somebody took the time to write that, and I love it.
so wait. So the tone sort of implies that they're being sarcastic.
I believe that they are being sarcastic.
But then they
it's-
gave 1 star.
but
So
it's- I know, right? It's like, come on, I love it.
Well,
I thought
let's
it was
just
great.
ignore them and they'll go away. We're giving them a little
No.
bit too much spotlight here.
We did. Listen, I'll give you credit because that's a little creative.
I got a review.
Okay.
The New York Times said, these really are the nicest folk on the river and on primetime television.
No. I don't know. That Lady Fox can go, though. We don't need her. Where's my wash?
Gretchen Fox.
Wash your own clothes, woman.
I'll pay you next week.
Yeah, okay.
Chuck and Snake were in the Muppet movie at the end, the big rainbow connection scene.
I don't think I ever knew that.
Yeah, they were there. They were there.
Interesting. Mhm.
You know what? And one of my favorite Christmas memories, it wasn't from the premiere of this, but for several years before it made it to ABC, it was shown on HBO over and over and over again in December. And I remember vividly opening my Christmas stocking because I always did that on Christmas Eve, right
Oh.
before Emmet Otter started, and unfurling the December issue of Famous Monsters with heart beeps on the cover. And then
Beeps.
having that in my lap while Emmet Otter was playing. So I will forever tie heart beeps to Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas because of that.
And that'll be the only time that Heart Beeps is mentioned on this podcast because I haven't thought about that movie in forever.
Yeah.
And now I won't forget it. Damn it. Damn you, Jim. There you go. That's a hell
Well,
of a
there you
Christmas
go.
special. That is our holiday special right there, folks.
So is this bucket proof?
I
Or
think it is
are we
bucket-proof.
gonna induct this into the list as well?
I mean, I would certainly say this is a 5 bucket, but I think that we should just say that this whole episode then. is-
Yeah.
The whole thing. Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And this is they're all, yeah. Wow. Well, I enjoyed all 3 of these. There's a reason that they are 5 buckets. I guess
So
we
that
gotta
puts
come down
another
from that.
Christmas episode to bed.
Too bad. Because Santa's coming, so go to bed.
So once
So
again,
that
everybody,
means-
Merry Christmas. And what are we doing next week?
I believe our episode is going to be very melodious. So are we diving into this 8-hour
We are diving in at the deep end. Christina will not be joining us because she is going to be in the midst of her Christmas celebrating. But next week, it'll be Jeff and I covering the Beatles' Get Back. It's going to be an all music episode because not only are we covering Get Back, but we mentioned before, we are going to be talking Monkeys next week
Yes.
and their only feature film, Head.
So next week then.
Yes.
All right.
Merry
thanks as
Christmas,
always.
everyone.
Go buy
Merry
yourself
Christmas.
some Christina Henry books and TMI t-shirts. And we'll see you here next week.
Right?
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, tmiconfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Think about the children. Think about the children. And the children are like, this is awesome.